Oh, hi! You caught me on Kanye's spaceship. Yeah, apparently good Kanye exists. And I was just living in the wrong timeline. We're just on our way to, where is it again?
I don't have time to explain where we're going. We must keep moving forward.
I mean, I've been in the ship for like 5 hours now. You'd think that I could...
Greetings. I am Regonix. Model CV-59. This ship is 5,827 billion quantum nanoidiums away from our destination. Would you like any additional details?
No thanks.
Request not understood. Please restate your answer definitively.
I don't want any more, thank you.
Oh, don't mind him. I got him from the diamonds and where ancestors creep Valhalla didn't exist.
Well, I'm gonna do the white man thing and make a video essay. Is that okay?
Due to the say script processing. 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 Processing.
Can I just make the damn video already?
Where'd you move here from, dumb?
Hi. Hello. Okay, can you stop staring at me? What are you even looking at? Are you just gonna stare at me all day? No. Okay, well, could you stop, please? It's kind of creepy.
Plush toy.
What? I can't hear you. You're talking so quietly.
Buy the Dumbsville plush toy. We did a new collaboration with Makeship. It's the Dumbsville Literally Me plush. It's high quality, but the stock is limited. You'll be able to relate to him because he too is lonely like me.
Okay, great. Thanks.
There goes your neighborhood, just like you thought it would. For everything we knew started to fall apart. Grow up, you're an adult man.
For 2020, I'm a stage of my own beat. God, gonna turn around and let my fucking son at the gas station.
Do bad fan bases truly ruin things? On a fundamental level in the greater art discussion, does a bad fan base truly ruin something? Whether it's movies, TV shows, video games, or music, we've all had to deal with, you know, that community. Whether it's a fan base just generally being toxic, or doing illegal things like and we've all had to deal with it. Hopefully not in the way. So a long time ago, I watched a video by Haydox called Undertale A Year Later, the overexposure effect. Now here's the thing, this is a really good video, and I really hope Haydox is eating well. However, one irk of the video that I had was that he focused a lot on the Undertale fanbase and how toxic it is, and how that can lead to a lower enjoyment of the game. However, do fanbases truly ruin art? I mean, it seems a bit silly, doesn't it? A bit goofy, a bit wild and wacky.
No one is ever going to look back on a Weezer and think, yeah, those guys were cool.
I mean, if you can separate art from the artist, wouldn't the audience be even easier to separate? I get that it's hard to separate art from artists, judging that the very nature of art requires the artist to put a level of personality into their work that's entirely and personally them. And furthermore, it's hard supporting a work knowing the artist might be a terrible person. Of course, I don't entirely agree with this notion. I think achievements of art should still be recognized, whether or not the artist is a good person or not. And you can do this without supporting the artist, of course. But I can see why people would be uncomfortable in the first place. That just makes sense to me. However, what if a work is ruined for you not by the artist, but the audience? Do fan bases ruin art? Should they ruin your enjoyment of art? Should you refuse to support a work because of it? I've had this question for a real long time, and I think I'm fit to answer it because I'm better than you.
Why is it that human porn is okay, but dragon porn is generally frowned upon? Dragons are much more attractive.
Now, this isn't a question I just asked out of nowhere, because I've seen people dismiss entire works because of this. Oh man, this game sucks because the fan base sucks. Oh man, I hate Steven Universe.
Based.
Because the fan base sucks dick.
Based.
I've heard stuff like this over and over again, in random online circles and even in my own friend groups. And you know what? Fuck it. I'm one of them. That's right. Guilty as charged. There are times where I've avoided and or said I would avoid works because of a certain fan base. Of course, most of the time I'm joking, not always, but there are plenty of people who aren't so tongue-in-cheek. And once again, I've sometimes been part of that. With very little to no irony. It's very easy to see a weird/bad fan base and be turned off of a work because of it. The question is though, is this justified? Should we separate art from the audience? And what are the reasons for not doing so? Well, the thing is, those reasons vary from person to person. Now, there are many different ways fan bases can ruin a certain work, and to try and simplify the many reasons would be a near impossible task. So for the sake of simplicity, I'm gonna do it anyways. After years and years of observation, I've boiled down 3 ways fan bases can ruin things, ranging from least severe to most severe. Of course, these most likely aren't the only reasons, but these are the ways that I've seen an audience directly affect a certain work. Directly invasively affecting how someone perceives said work. Invasively ruining how the work is perceived. Invasively ruining the actual experience of the work. Spilling my goddamn ice cream on the ground. Murdering my entire family in front of me. First off is oversaturation. When something is overliked, it's almost kind of a turn-off at certain points. And makes experiencing that work a lot less special. The thing is, when literally everyone likes something, and when it's being raved about all over the place, it can sometimes get really annoying. Let's take Star Wars for example. So there was this video going around a while back with the caption, "Bro said Star Wars was lame," and some kid in a Star Wars shirt getting really mad that someone didn't like Star Wars.
Say it to my face.
Well, sorry, random autistic high school kid, because as someone who is also an autistic Star Wars fan, my character is literally Lego Obi-Wan. Liking Star Wars is literally not cool at all. And let me explain why. The people who were there to make Star Wars massive, the first people who truly first experienced Star Wars, are probably this kid's grandma. My mom, who is 50 years old and went through menopause, she's a Star Wars fan. No, she's not playing KOTOR 2 or anything. She wouldn't know Cal Kestis from Glup Shido, but she watched Star Wars in the 70s. She likes Luke Skywalker. She's connected to all the characters. Back in high school, I went to Yucatan, Mexico. It was for a missions trip, alright? One of the guys who helped run the mission house there was named Antonio, or Tony for short. The guy was absolutely hilarious, awesome, funny guy. Now, I have zero idea if this guy even stepped foot in the States. This was a man from Venezuela who was living in the Yucatan, Mexico. Meanwhile, you have me walking around with him and my friend Matt. Now, me and my friend Matt, we're a couple of fucking gringos. While this guy, Tony, breathes in the Mexican jungle every day. And guess what? Tony was a massive Star Wars fan. I can travel to a completely different country and talk about Star Wars with someone. That's how popular it is. Now, yes, this is a good thing. It shows how strong of a work Star Wars really is. How culturally impactful the whole series is. And I'm not even saying it's bad to like Star Wars. Fuck, dude, I like Star Wars. But is it cool to like Star Wars? Not really. This comes with an unintended side effect. It becomes way too popular, and the little hipster inside of us goes, well, what's so special about it? The work is almost kind of devalued in a way. When everyone likes a work, it's kind of less special in a way. There's something about getting into something on your own, and getting into something that's not liked by everyone, that makes it more special. However, this isn't the end-all be-all to getting into something, and it doesn't necessarily ruin a work. Just because it's popular doesn't mean it's bad, or even necessarily harder to like it. That's why I put oversaturation first, because it really is the least invasive. Out of all the things a fanbase can do to make something worse, being large isn't really one of them. It can be, certainly, but not to any meaningful degree in my opinion. What is invasive, however, is forcing an experience. Forcing someone to experience a certain work in a certain way. This is something that I admittedly am guilty of. How, you may ask? Well, going back to Star Wars, how many times have you heard this? Whatever you do, don't watch the Disney Plus or Blu-ray versions of Star Wars. If you really want to get into Star Wars, what you really gotta do is buy some old-ass VHS tapes, some increasingly expensive laser discs, or some probably illegal bootleg despecialized copy. Only then can you call yourself a real Star Wars fan. This is pretty common. Star Wars, Evangelion, Silent Hill. With all these, you have to watch the definitive edition in order to truly experience the work. This makes actually experiencing the work much more intimidating. When you're someone new who wants to get into the franchise, all you want to do is just pop in the first installment and go from there. Nobody wants to have to jump through 15 different hurdles just to understand what Star Wars is all about. However, to be perfectly fair, I don't blame the fans for this. In spite of what I just said, a lot of these companies do a shit job at preserving their work. Both Star Wars and Silent Hill are legitimately downgrades. They have been literally proven to look worse than the older versions. Silent Hill HD replaces the font with Comic Sans.
See his fucking sign here. Someone at fucking Hijinks Studios thought it was was necessary to change the fucking font to Comic Sans.
If anything, this is a way of dissuading new people from buying into a bad product. Because that's what these preservation efforts are. They're lazy, bad products. You don't see people telling others to buy the Xbox 360 versions of Darksiders 1 or 2. Because in Darksiders' case, the best version of those games are the War Master Edition and the Definitive Edition. They're objectively the better versions of the game. They have more graphics options and better graphics in general. They run better at higher frame rates and resolution. They include all the DLC and whatnot. And this makes getting into the games a lot easier. It just makes sense that the latest version of the game would be the best version of the game. So in this case, it's not the fan base ruining a work, it's the company ruining a work and the fans notifying people about it. However, there's a much worse way of forcing an experience onto someone. A way that I'm guilty of as well, albeit when I was younger. And that's forcing someone to watch or play a certain work a certain way. And getting mad when they don't. I still remember in Undertale when I would get mad at people for killing Torio. And other people would too. But with the way Undertale is and the way it guilts you for doing that, the way the narrative and the gameplay is built, it's like, why would you do this? The game has multiple endings and said endings for a reason. The game's narrative is the way it is for a reason. The point of the game is that you, the player, get connected to the characters. And that incentivizes you to not kill them. Furthermore, in the case of any work, not just Undertale, it's important for someone to enjoy the work themselves and form their own personal relationship around it. Personally and invasively telling someone they're playing a game wrong or watching a movie wrong or whatnot inherently devalues that experience. You are literally getting in the way of someone enjoying something themselves. And as a result, they'll probably enjoy it a lot less. They more so do it out of obligation than genuine passion or curiosity. Let people enjoy works themselves. Let them mess up. So then they can hopefully learn from those mistakes and properly communicate with the work. I've seen this elitism way too many times and it's so inherently anti-art. Once again, when I was younger, I was guilty of this because I wanted people to have the same experience I did. But then I grew up and realized that not everybody is going to be like me, nor should everybody be like me. Nobody's going to watch a work the same way as me. They're not going to play a game the same way as me, nor should they ever. Because part of enjoying a work is experiencing it yourself. Having your own kind of conversation with the work. What you are essentially doing is getting two people to date each other and then busting down their door when they're about to have sex.
McLovin!
And raging at them for doing anything other than missionary. It's absolutely invasive, and it really does hurt the relationship. If you have ever done this before, this is essentially what you're doing. It's insanely immature, and it really does devalue the work for other people. But I think the worst kind of forcing an experience is forcing an experience in general. This shit is the absolute worst. You ever had someone continually bother you to play a video game, watch a movie or anime or something, and they wouldn't stop bothering you about it, and sometimes got weirdly angry if you didn't experience that thing? This happens to numerous people all the time, and every time it does, it's just really awful. I had this happen to me once in real life. There was this guy I knew who was a massive fan of BioShock. Now, I was in my first year of college, and at the time, I never played BioShock, and this guy I met recommended it to me, and I said, okay, I'll check it out sometime. And then he kept doing it, and doing it, and doing it, and doing it, and doing it. And it got to the point where he actually threatened our friendship over it, saying that because I played games like The Witcher 3 first, and put things like a college homework first, that he quote-unquote wasn't getting anything out of our friendship. Which, if your friendship is based on what video games someone plays, that's already incredibly flimsy. But whenever I called him out on this clearly toxic behavior, he said he was just trying to get people to get the same experience as he did. Which, no you aren't. You weren't forced to play BioShock out of obligation. You played it because you were personally interested in it. And by forcing someone to play it, you are inherently forcing them into a different experience than you. They're playing it for homework, not for fun. And the personal aspect is completely removed in that case.
You know what else is popular with video gamers? Not banging chicks.
Art is a personal conversation between the artist's work and the person watching the art. And by getting in the way of that, you are harming that personal experience. Let the person discover the work themselves. Let the consumer have their own personal relationship with the work. I'm not even joking here. If you've ever forced someone to get into a work, you should stop the video right now and apologize to them. Like it's just an abhorrently shitty thing to do. This, of course, extends out to whether they actually like the work or not. So many people get so mad when somebody doesn't like something. Which, look, look, I get it, bad takes exist, but I've seen this infest beyond the internet. One example is that BioShock guy that I mentioned earlier. I remember him being on the verge of tears over the phone, calling me because I made an Instagram post saying I didn't care for Black Panther, which at that point, it's not your job to defend some work's honor. If you enjoy something, that's awesome, and you shouldn't let anyone take that away from you. But you have to understand, not everyone's going to have that same experience. Honestly, people get way too vitriolic way too fast over this, and every time it happens, it makes people dislike the work more, because now they're associating it with some lunatic, trying to get them to like it more. The same, of course, goes for disliking something. If somebody likes something you dislike, then obviously you're a dick for trying to force them otherwise. In other words, the same rules apply. Of course, I feel like a lot of fan bases suffer more from toxic positivity, so it's more common to see this kind of thing happen. Either way, this is also a very intrusive way of giving a bad experience to a work, and it's very toxic, which, speaking of which, the third way a fan base can ruin something is just by generally being toxic. This can range from just being annoying to actively being harmful to be around. I'll think about the whole Steven Universe fan art incident, where a fan artist was bullied into nearly ending their own lives, and I'll think about how many people were inherently turned off from watching Steven Universe because of it. It makes me wonder how many people tried watching Steven Universe and just couldn't shake the association off. When I quit Sonic content a few years ago, I couldn't play Sonic games for at least a month, because every time I did, I thought of the toxic fan base that I made videos on at the time, and it would get me so depressed that I just kind of had to shut the game off. Believe it or not, a lot of this does affect how people view works.
Want to see my impression of every guy I'll never have sex with? Super Smash Bros.
And it ends up hurting the experience of the work, especially when it comes to goddamn internet fandoms. Now, I've been ultra critical so far, and it may sound like the case is very much clear. Well, fan bases do ruin experiences. They are very much intrusive. However, what I've said so far is playing only one side of the devil's advocate. Here's the thing, fan bases can ruin the experience for someone, but a lot of these are very much like external. Yes, forcing someone to play BioShock is bad. It's not a nice thing to do, and it does hurt the experience of playing BioShock. But like, the game didn't change at all. The gameplay's the same, the plot twist is the same, the story's the same, the amount of influence it has on the gaming industry is the same. I would go on to play BioShock a few years later, completely detached from the guy who tried to force it onto me. And you know what? It was a damn good game. Needless to say, I saw the vision. While fan bases and toxic fans and whatnot can influence how you experience a game, does it really devalue it? It's certainly not the work's fault at all. I'm sure if Ken Levine heard about my story, he'd go, yeah, the guy who tried to do that shit to you is a fucking asshole. I'm sure Toby Fox wouldn't stand by at least 90% of the fucked up shit that happens in the Undertale fan base. It's just that unfortunately, a lot of bad people got into Undertale, even though a lot of the game's themes would contradict these people. Plus, my enjoyment and or disenjoyment of a franchise and how the fan base affects that is still pretty independent, even if it is traumatic to me. Take Sonic, for example. When I stopped doing Sonic content, I was still open to being a casual Sonic fan. I would eventually stop being a Sonic fan, but it wasn't the fan base that did it in for me. No, what actually got me to not be a Sonic fan a year later was, simply put, I just fell out of love with the series. It just didn't appeal to me anymore, especially with the current direction it's going. And at this point, I found other franchises that filled the itch for me. And furthermore, a lot of times, when I say I won't get into something specifically because of a fan base, and of course, I'm not being overly facetious or tongue-in-cheek about it, I'm gonna be honest, I probably wouldn't have liked it anyways. For example, the Melanie Martinez community is notoriously awful, filled with super toxic dick writers who will harm you over anything. However, I'm gonna be honest, her music really is not for me. Similar to Lana Del Rey, she's very ethereal, kind of emotional. Well, meanwhile, my music taste is same for like Genshin Impact. Like, yeah, the fan base is really fucking toxic and I don't want anywhere near that game, but honestly, I wouldn't have enjoyed it anyways. It looks very generic and boring. So that begs the question, how much do fan bases really ruin works? And furthermore, I don't know, it feels unfair to judge an entire work based on its community alone. Like, yeah, it's funny to do it, but it's not like a legitimate criticism or anything. There's a concept in fiction called the death of the author, where essentially how an author views a work should not be taken into account when it comes to the general audience's evaluation of it. Now, while I do think there is value in the author's own views of his own work, he still shouldn't be the complete end-all be-all. And I feel like at least partially this should extend out to the audience. Yes, it is the audience's job to interpret the work, but within that, the work should also speak for itself. It should speak on the individual level. No individual's view on a work will be the 100% true way to view the work. And that's why art is so special. Whether it's movies, TV shows, video games, or music, what the work means is specifically up to you. Yes, you, the one watching this. Now, yes, misreadings do happen, but that's part of the experience, having the work change with you. And I don't know, I don't feel like the individual actions of an audience should be a defining factor in how good or bad a work is. That's the work's job, and the work can't control its own audience. So to an extent, it is unfair to judge a work like this, especially when the work literally can't control it. The work is its own thing and the audience is another thing. That is devil's advocate number 2. So, if you couldn't tell, a lot of this is really weird. The question is, do fan bases truly ruin things? Or is this view completely unfair? Well, I think the answer, looking at both sides, is very much yes and no. Here's the thing. Yes, in every case, the work will always stay the same. And the work, separate from the fan stereotype, is going to be its own work. For example, the Persona franchise is a very notoriously toxic fan base. However, that doesn't stop, say, Persona 3 from being really fucking interesting. It's still an incredibly thought-provoking game with very interesting, deep themes. However, fans can absolutely ruin the external experience of it, and can make interest in a work an absolute nightmare. But that still doesn't change the work at all. I understand why someone wouldn't want to get into something because of a bad personal experience, and I don't really want to invalidate that. But I've also heard stories of, say, Undertale helping people go through a rough time in their lives. Art is incredibly weird like that. Its meaning will change individual to individual without even doing anything. And I feel like it's unfair to judge an entire work because of personal experiences. It may be cathartic and sometimes even justified even, but it's also completely unfair. For example, I had an ex-girlfriend who was really into Death Note, and it's one of the reasons I can't really get into Death Note. I've seen it, of course, because she kind of made me watch it, but I don't really remember anything about it, nor do I have any interest in revisiting it.
Wow. Wow. Like they say this is my twin. Low key, kind of looks like my twin.
Now, would you say this is an unjustifiable thing to do? No, absolutely not. I'm allowed to be into and not be into whatever work I so damn well please. But is this also kind of a petty thing for me to do? Yes, absolutely it is. Because I am being unfair to Death Note. It didn't break my fucking heart. You could say that this woman did ruin Death Note for me. But the thing is, it literally only ruins Death Note for me. It doesn't ruin the entire work or its influence on the genre. I respect Death Note as an influential work of art. I just had a bad run-in with it. Of course, I'm not trying to justify clearly bad behavior. Here's the thing, let people enjoy what they want to enjoy, and by extension, not enjoy what they don't want to enjoy. It's great to share works and your love of certain works around with people, but in the end, the only person who can have the experience you want them to experience is that person themselves, and you shouldn't force that because, well, you're not that person. However, I also feel that it's completely unfair to criticize a work just for its bad fan base. A work should absolutely be judged on its own merits. However, the fans should also make sure they're letting that happen without being intrusive about it. Anyways, I'm trapped on Kanye's ship. Fuck this video.
Fuck you in the lanes you came with. Me and you ain't on the same shit. You ain't in my lane, bitch. Nah, throw that shit in fifth. Rollie on my wrist. Ay, baby, you a star. I'm my only wish. I'm counting blue hundreds. I'm too money. Ay, and my little bitch, she too lovely. Yeah, hanging up and calling me right back. Ay, baby, why you calling me like that? Yeah, getting high with the seat, lay back. Baby, gon' relax, yeah. Hey, they don't know the half, yeah. No matter what happened, I got your back. Baby, that's the facts, yeah. That's the facts, yeah. We can fight, but the feeling's gone. I try to find the words, but they never come. I can still see you on the lawn. Hey, laying outside in the summer sun. Yeah, we can fight, but the feeling's gone. I try to find the words, but they never come. I can still see you on the lawn. Hey, laying outside in the summer sun. Hey, I'm with a dark-skinned girl on a Sunday. That's that Black Sabbath. She put them ones all down on a Hyundai, and she had to have it. Baby, that's the facts, yeah. That's the facts, yeah.
Pornography.